Tell me exactly what happened.
I think he overdosed on heroin.
It's robbing us of our future.
I need an ambulance right away. My son just overdosed on heroin.
If you're a child, a parent, an adult.
My mom and him are known heroin addicts.
If you're breathing,
I want to check his breathing, okay?
this is a problem that affects your family.
My sister just ran inside and told me to come out, and he was on the ground. I think he's ODing.
I was caught off guard.
Please, hurry.
It's very diverse and it's pretty reflective of Montgomery County.
Oh my God.
This is not one of these problems that we're going to arrest our way out of.
Just so you know, sir, the police are coming too. They might get there first to help him, okay?
Please tell me what.
You'll do anything to save your child.
I can't wake him up. I can't wake him up.
Nobody is safe from this. It is everywhere.
Ma'am?
I'm here. The help's on the way, okay? I'm going to stay on the phone with you. Let me know if anything
There you go.
changes or he gets worse.
Is he breathing? Is he breathing?
Heroin. At one time, it was a drug that might have just been confined to the inner city, but those days are gone. Today, the quiet suburbs across our county are the new battleground for heroin, where the number of overdose deaths has skyrocketed.
Best friends that have supported you all your life, you're still there.
These Montgomery County women have come together, as they do every Tuesday night, to talk about how they are coping with the devastating loss of a child due to a heroin overdose.
And it resonates with me, heroin. That word was never a part of our vocabulary.
Amy Cassignol's 24-year-old son, JP, died in July of last year. His addiction began after he was prescribed Oxycontin for an ACL injury in high school.
So when he told me he was an addict and that he had researched it and he tried his best to fight it on his own, but now he needs help. But I was almost reassured that he told me it was pain medicine. I thought, oh, that'll be easy to take care of. Thank you for coming to me. Little did I know it would be the next 3 years of hell.
He was the person that would like to go on the biggest roller coaster ride.
Linda Hudman's son, AJ, overdosed and died at the age of 22. After he was arrested for having 2 Oxycontins, she began to notice signs that there might be a problem.
Money was missing, jewelry was missing. He did look high, but we thought he was using marijuana. We thought the marijuana these days must be very strong, okay? Never again could we have possibly imagined that our son would be using heroin. By the time we figured out my son was addicted to heroin, it was as if he had been caught by a tsunami and he was trying to swim his way out of a tsunami. And we were pulling him, trying to get him out of that tsunami.
I think this was taken on the Eastern Shore and we were all together.
Casey Ryan's addiction started in middle school with marijuana and alcohol. He told his mother, Hemina, he felt more normal when he was under the influence. Casey had been clean for a year and a half when he injured his foot and was prescribed opioid painkillers. That triggered a relapse that ended with his death of a heroin overdose at the age of 25.
So I had him here and I started noticing spoons and, things that were just, this was not just normal recovery from surgery. He was getting more and more and more just completely, wasted and getting drugs, not that were prescribed. He had finished the prescription drugs and he was continuing to medicate and find other drugs. I realized at that point that, now we were dealing with heroin.
So this is Kyle.
The fact that her son was using heroin took Debbie Gaffner by complete surprise.
So he's very missed.
When Kyle moved back to Maryland from South Carolina, one of his friends alerted Debbie to Kyle's problem. They confronted him about it, and he agreed to talk with someone.
Promised us that it was something he never wanted to do again. The doctors didn't feel that he needed to go into any kind of treatment to detox, that he wasn't physically addicted to it. So we did get him into counseling. He had some depression issues, and we're trying to get him back into school. And fast forward 10 months later, we had no idea that he was still using, and he died of an overdose.
It's literally one day at a time for these mothers who have formally named their group SOUL, or Surviving Our Ultimate Loss. They started meeting a little over a year ago, and there were just a handful of members. Today, their group is approaching 25.
We see the kind of mothers the kind of families that these kids came from, the beauty of these children, the inner beauty, the soul. So many of our kids are so many common things, you know. They almost have this incredible soul, I think. And you hear these stories and you find yourself in these women. You find yourself in these families. You hear, you reflect back, you see your story.
The women agree it's a unique grief because it's compounded by blame and accusations. They say much of the pain they endured while their sons were in active addiction was done in isolation.
Just the heartache that, is there something else that I could have done? What, did I fail my child somehow?
When your child dies of heroin addiction, who wouldn't think that they did something terribly wrong as a parent? Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe I should have done more of this or more of that.
The stories of the women of Soul are an example of how the heroin epidemic is affecting people from all walks of life. The war on this drug is not isolated to poor neighborhoods. Deaths from heroin overdoses are surging in the suburbs.
I've been focused on drug enforcement my entire career.
Sergeant Jason Kokinos has been a Montgomery County police officer for 10 years.
You cannot, with any drug really, but especially heroin, you cannot say a particular group of individuals are using heroin. I mean, it's all genders, ages, races, economic status. I mean, the extremely poor, the extremely wealthy. I mean, it's hitting every group and class of people.
Kokinos is based at the county's 3rd District Police Station in Germantown. His team keeps an eye on hotels in the area where what police call guest dealers set up shop to sell their drugs, and it's mostly heroin.
As of recent, within the last 3 years, it's just exploded to where, heroin is the #1 target, if you will. And it has to be. It's the one that's killing people. It's the one that's damaging communities, damaging families. So heroin's kind of taken off, if you compare them to the other drugs. We're still enforcing all the other drugs, but heroin is definitely, taking up most of the time, as it should.
They also patrol neighborhoods looking for suspicious activity and talking with residents about what they might be seeing. Last year in this Germantown neighborhood, they shut down an open-air drug market.
So we had individuals that were standing on the corner selling heroin, and they would go back into that wood line over there and then ingest the heroin using a syringe intravenously in that wood line. So we got a complaint from the citizens that live here. So we observed the behaviors going on here, and we were able to, through an investigation, identify who the main person was selling heroin in this neighborhood, and we were able to apprehend them. Found multiple bags of heroin that were packaged for sales, and then furthermore build a case with our state attorney's office that resulted in successful prosecution.
And Assistant Police Chief Luther Reynolds says parents should be aware that there can be early warning signs and ways to spot heroin use.
Biggest thing I could advise any parent is to be engaged, highly engaged. Social media, where your kids are, who they're hanging out with, what they're doing. There's a lot of warning signs in the household.
Lieutenant Ron Smith works in the police department's Special Investigation Division. He says if a parent is in the least bit suspicious that their child might be using heroin, here's what they might be seeing at home.
I've brought us a lot of examples of things that you find when you go to crime scenes, or people should look for if they have children in their homes. Talk a little bit about what we have here.
One of the things that we preach is that parents should be educated, they should be informed. They should take an active role in making sure that their children are not involved in this. And things that they can look for are small digital scales like that where people are weighing out narcotics, small glassine bags like this that narcotics can be transported in and sold in, syringes used to inject heroin into the body. People can go to a drugstore and, tell a pharmacist that they're diabetics. A spoon with this burnt residue in here. So what somebody will do is take this powder, mix it with a little bit of water so it becomes soluble, heat it up with this lighter. That way they can liquefy the substance. Then they'll withdraw it using that syringe and then inject it. You might find something as innocuous as a box of X-Lax. The use of heroin will cause people to become constipated. A dollar bill. Sometimes they'll transport the narcotics in this. Hide the narcotics in the middle, and you can see the powder residue in there.
Yep.
And then you fold it up, and
Slip it in your pocket.
it looks like you got $1 in
Yep.
your pocket. But aluminum foil, folded into small sheets with burn marks on the bottom. Again, they use the lighter to light this up, put the powder in there, and then as it gases up, they can huff it. Small baggies, they cut the corners off of Ziploc bags, tie them in a knot like that. We're starting to see heroin in the county in small gel caps, small straws cut off to, again, snort the powder. The can with the hidden compartments where all this stuff can be stuffed inside of it, it's put up on a shelf and you would never know.
There's also telltale behavior to look for. Besides missing money and personal belongings, parents need to keep an eye on their child's physical appearance and behavior.
Now that I know what some of the signs are, with him sleeping a lot, always having an upset stomach with the antacids, constipation. I thought it had a lot to do with his depression. I didn't realize that these were symptoms of heroin use.
There is just such a devastating spiritual, emotional toll that this disease takes on the struggling addict as well as the families that are trying to, save them and help them. And a lot of the problem comes because the parents don't understand what they're battling. They don't get what monster has taken over their child.
Heroin spread into the suburbs like Montgomery County grew out of an earlier wave of addiction to painkillers prescribed by physicians. Police also attribute the growing number of overdose deaths to the synthetic opioid fentanyl, which drug dealers are adding to their product, making it stronger. Together, these trends have Montgomery County Police working in overdrive.
It basically has consumed our workforce. We are sending out detectives around the clock, every hour of the day, to investigate these cases.
And as overdose cases have been on the rise here in Montgomery County over the last 5 years, a new life-saving drug has become available to police, first responders, and families. Thanks to a law passed last year by the Maryland General Assembly, Narcan can be prescribed to anyone who is at risk or who lives with someone they could assist in case of an opioid overdose. In Montgomery County this year, Narcan has saved close to 100 lives.
We have about 90 officers in the police department trained to deploy Narcan in the field, but we're very fortunate in this county. We have a very robust emergency medical system in Montgomery County. 75% of the cases that we respond to where Narcan has been used by the fire department, the people survive.
That's 70 or 90 people that could be dead this year if it wasn't for Narcan. Has it also encouraged people to continue their behavior and they know that Narcan's kind of like a fallback safe for them? Unfortunately, yes, that is a kind of a thing that's happened, unfortunately, that they've said, oh, well, I can push the limit because I know Narcan is going to save me. And the next day, they're overdosing again.
Also new in Maryland, the Good Samaritan law, which provides immunity from criminal prosecution when a person calls 911 during a drug or alcohol-related overdose.
This is a big issue because many people are afraid to call 911. And that's really one of our main themes here is speak up, save a life, call 911. The Good Samaritan law protects you. Knowledge is power. And we're here to educate and we're here to save lives.
Renee Benzel is one of the co-founders of Soul. Her son Alex, a 28-year-old college graduate about to embark on a career in physical therapy, became addicted to painkillers as a result of several herniated discs in his back. He died in the basement of their home after a neighbor shot him up with heroin. That was in January of 2015. Not many of the first responders were equipped with Narcan at that time, as was the case when first responders arrived at the Benzel home.
A lot of people responded. The problem was that nobody had Narcan. And because there was no Narcan on any of the first responders, the police, the firemen, everyone that came, his heart rate came back, but he never recovered.
Benzel, who works as a pharmaceutical rep, knew her son was stealing from her to support his habit, but she says Alex was not a criminal. He had a disease. She and Amy Casanol say the health industry needs to be held accountable for this epidemic.
I am still a little bitter or very angry about that this has been caused by the health industry, but they won't help us fix it. The most they've done is tell doctors don't prescribe so much. That's the most they've done.
There's no understanding of alternatives to opiates because they hand them out readily like candy, and they don't assess the patient or stratify the patient correctly to see who should get it, who shouldn't. They also don't assess other options or alternative therapies to opiates, and they also don't minimize the quantity that they're prescribing. So if you have, a pain generator that's going to last a day or two, you need a day or two of meds. You don't need 30.
Where's this coming from?
Today, both Smith and Kokinos will tell you how the police approach dealing with someone who is using drugs is different.
We tried to get the users treatment with Health and Human Services.
It's now no longer about zero tolerance and jail time. The county has implemented a program called STEER: Stop, Triage, Engage, Educate, and Rehabilitate, a gentler approach to the war on drugs.
And what we have is a certified clinician that works in-house with our department. So when my investigators go out to investigate these overdose cases, they reach out to our STEER coordinator, and then she will do a follow-up interview with these folks, basically offering them the assistance they need to go to rehab or some type of treatment, because this is not one of these problems that we're going to arrest our way out of.
If we can educate people not to use the substance, if we can arrest the drug dealers and the importers, so we try to reduce and remove the amount of heroin on the street, and then if we interact with our users and try to get them treatment and get them off the substance, all three of those things together is all equally important and all equally what's going to give us, a path towards success.
Thank you very much.
In February of last year, Governor Larry Hogan announced the establishment of the Heroin and Opioid Emergency Task Force.
I intend to declare a state of emergency here in Maryland,
designed to support efforts to address the state's growing opioid epidemic.
not just Montgomery County, it's not urban areas, but everywhere in our state, suburban and even rural areas. Our smallest counties, it's the #1 problem they're faced with.
Prescription drug addiction has been deemed an epidemic.
As part of that outreach, the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office put together a program to educate the public about this growing trend.
So Speak Up, Save a Life is really here, and it's a creation of all of ours together.
The goal of Speak Up, Save a Life is to educate about the problem, educate through awareness, through real life cases, through real life tragedies, so other good families don't have to go through what so many families have gone through.
Oakdale Church in Olney was where the most recent forum took place.
Everybody working together for the common cause. We're here because we're in crisis.
Chaikin has taken this message on the road and has hit more than a dozen county schools since he started last year.
We need a holistic approach to look at this from not just a medical, legal, and moral perspective, but from a family perspective. What can we do together? Together we're strong. Individually, when under the influence or suffering in this condition, we're weak. We need to work together. We need to identify people in our family and our community that may have a problem and think of the right way to help them.
Good evening, everyone.
One of the speakers at the forum is Leah Edgecombe. When she was a freshman in high school, she went to a friend's house and snorted heroin and experienced a reaction that left her a paraplegic. She and her mother, Lisa, have made it their mission to warn teens to stay away from drugs.
I want every teenager to make the best choices that they can. I feel like I don't have the answers either. So we're all just trying to make it by, and I just want, I want to help.
When they told me it was heroin, and I was completely just caught off guard. I didn't think it was out there like that, and I want to, as a parent, let other parents know that it is out there. It's rampant, and nobody's exempt for it. I thought I was doing everything right.
Assistant Police Chief Luther Reynolds has taken a special interest in Leah and her quest, helping her family build a ramp at their home after she was released from the hospital.
So what Leah's doing is making a difference, and that's so exciting. If I could say anything to her or anybody else, every one of those conversations has an impact. My kids, because they saw Leah, it's very personal. They don't want to be in that position, and they know that that's avoidable, and Leah says that.
What would you say to somebody, whether they be a high school student or a college student, that was thinking about experimenting with heroin or a prescription drug? Is it worth it or not?
Absolutely not.
This didn't have to happen. I made a decision. It was a bad decision, and look what happened to me. Don't let it happen to you. It's powerful when you hear that.
I know sometimes you get a little bit of doubt about the impact you're making, but it's great and it's awesome, and we appreciate you so much. Thank you both for what you do, for your strength. Thank you.
For some addicts, treatment is a choice that's made when a user wants to regain his or her life. In Montgomery County, the choices for treatment are limited. Avery Road in Rockville is run through a county contract with Maryland Treatment Centers. There are 60 beds, and the average length of stay is 18 to 20 days. Megan Westwood is the director.
Our population looks very different. So when I came 12 years ago, probably 50% of our admissions were alcohol related. Now, pretty much 50 to maybe even a little higher than that are opiate dependent when they come in. Tend to be younger. So our demographic has changed.
The approach to treating an opiate addict is different in that it can take 2 years before the brain is functioning normally again. That's because heroin damages the brain's ability to produce endorphins, and in recovery, the addict can feel depressed with no motivation, which sometimes drives them to use again.
It's a long road. So the goal really being to prepare them and talk to them about staying in treatment for a prolonged period of time. And that doesn't always go well with a young adult who thinks of, 2 months as a lifetime, and we're talking about being in care for 18 months, 2 years in some level of service.
Westwood says they cannot keep up with the current demand for services at Avery Road. They are under-resourced and are in desperate need of additional funding.
We've had the same number of beds in Montgomery County for 20 years. There's 60 beds here. It's been flat funded for 11 years, but it's pretty tricky when we've got this booming population and stagnant resources. For 11 years is a long time.
Some of the women of Seoul have a different view on treatment and how it should be administered. They say there are not enough options, and even with insurance, it can be hard to get a bed at a facility.
If the insurance companies won't pay for treatment for an extended period of time, and abstinence up to 3 to 5 years is the only way that the brain can heal, we have to look at maybe a new system.
If there were something that existed where kids could go, be protected from themselves, but also be, fed and provided and cared for in a loving, humane way, to say, this isn't punishment. We are going to empower and strengthen you so that when you do go out, when you are ready to take that, and have people be able to come in and visit. Don't just connect them and isolate them.
Mark Elrich chairs the council's public safety committee.
Our attitude toward mental health treatment in this state is pathetic, and then it falls on the county. We don't have the beds, so our mental health facility is a jail. So it's a holding place, and we have an attitude in the jail that we should be helping people, but we don't have the facilities in the jail to be helping people. So we do as much as we can do, but what they really need is a center. They need beds. They need more than the beds at Avery Road. Avery's, not the only one. There's not room in the hospitals for overdoses. There's just not room. Until somebody's going to get serious and provide room, I fear that, this is going to be a continuing problem.
Both Alex Mulvey and Kasol Dow have overdosed and spent time in jail as a result of their addiction to heroin.
Ultimately, heroin gave me that feeling of avoidance. like you just kind of doze off and like fall asleep, and people are like, why is that cool, you know? And it's like, man, it's like falling into a warm hug that you don't ever have to get out of, you know, like the euphoria like from it, and then on top of that, like the physical withdrawal and aspect of it, you know, it's such a drawback. And even, you know, I've acquired a year clean prior to this stint of recovery, and somehow it still drew me back.
I started doing heroin when I was about 21, maybe 22 years old, and all the years prior to that I had been using, it was the high that the heroin gave me is what I was searching for the entire time. And I think what that was kind of the feelings of euphoria, but not just that, it was more also kind of just the numbness of it.
However, today they are clean, thanks to Montgomery County Drug Court.
Welcome to the celebration of our 16th graduating class of the Adult Drug Court.
The program offers drug offenders the opportunity to break the cycle of addiction. Alex, a graduate of the program, has been drug-free for a little more than 3 years, and Casal is set to graduate in October. They will tell you there is hope.
I made it out into a career, and you know, I have my own place, I bought a car, like I have a license, I'm healthy, and I've been afforded the opportunity to travel and do things that I never, like they were only in my wildest dreams.
I've come a long way to be where I am today. And it's through, you know, a lot of hard work. I owe where I am today not only to drug court but to Narcotics Anonymous. If not for the plethora of meetings and the huge network that I have of people who are also in recovery in this area, you know, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today.
I'm a full-time member of the Anonymous programs. I come and do events of these sorts, you know.
Alex told some of her story to a gathering in Rockville as part of International Overdose Awareness Day.
While I'm here to share my experience of hope, I do understand the struggle, not only with addiction, but in loss. Just in the last 3 years that I've been clean, I've lost over 30 friends due to the disease of addiction. Thank you very much for letting me share.
The candlelight vigil drew dozens of residents, each one affected by this epidemic in their own way. The members of Soul organized the event to raise awareness and break the stigma associated with this disease. Montgomery County Judge Mary Elsa Bernard is one of the founding members of the group. She lost her daughter Kate to an overdose last year.
For my daughter Kate, she had been in recovery for 9 months, and for her it just took one night. She relapsed, and her first and only overdose killed her.
There are many who say Maryland needs to toughen its laws so that when overdose leads to death, the distributors can be charged with murder. Others will argue that approach goes against treating the heroin epidemic. Instead, it demonizes it.
I'm speaking for Debbie, who lost her son.
However, anyone who has been touched by this epidemic will tell you by starting a dialogue and working together, Montgomery County will begin to make progress in reducing the number of people dying from heroin overdoses.
And I do want to say that it is so hard for us to reconcile the smashed dreams that we had, the dreams that we had that have now been smashed with the hard reality of our lives after the death of our children. It's the hope of Soul that by holding this vigil that we're raising awareness that this tragedy can happen to anyone, and that we as a community must work together to address this epidemic.
As you can see, there are lots of people here in Montgomery County who are affected by heroin and addiction. We're going to leave you with some contact information for addicts and their families who are looking for help. For County Cable Montgomery, I'm Susan Kennedy. Thanks for watching.
Okay, what's making you say he's ODing?
Because I know that he does that. Like, he's actually OD before.
Okay, and are you with him now?
Yeah.
Is he conscious?
He was moving.
Is he breathing?
He was making noises.
Okay, is he breathing?
Oh, okay.